What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of our Coast to Coast rankings. Today we got the tight ends for you coming hot. Number one, Travis Kelce. I mean, was there really any debate here? Did you guys ever think twice about putting anyone else here?
To be
Nah.
honest, I actually for a second was thinking maybe Waller could pull it off. Just thinking this was my kind of pre-Super Bowl thing, but now think no, the Chiefs didn't win the Super Bowl. I think they're going to come out. They're going to be strong with their offense, which have a record-breaking offense next season, I'd predict. So that's why I got Kelce on top. But I think Waller's going to have a fantastic season.
I think Waller's like the only one that could really like compete with him. I think, to be honest, like there's no one really else that like I would even consider next to Kelce.
I mean, another question is like, how early would you take Kelce?
I think the
Bottom
earliest
second.
would be like,
I mean, top second.
yeah, I'd say like the 10th pick, like 10th pick, like end of the first round, like start of the second. I think that'd be the earliest I'd take him.
Damn.
I mean, you got to look at his stats: 105 receptions,
because he's putting
1,400
up like
yards.
top wide receiver stats, and it's like he's so valuable because like you have such a premier on that position. Because like I mean, but Waller was like kind of inconsistent, and a lot of these other guys, I mean, they've been like super like up and down. You never really know.
Yeah, I mean, guy had more receptions than Keenan Allen, his teammate Tyreek Hill, more yards than his teammate Tyreek Hill, 11 touchdowns, which is more than Hopkins, Justin Jefferson, Diggs, Calvin Ridley, some guys that have some really solid seasons. He's number one. I mean, above those guys.
Yeah, as a receiver, he'd be right up there with the guys that are getting drafted around there anyway. So
yeah, I mean, he's
crazy.
He's the biggest sure thing in the league, especially in fantasy. So moving on to number two. We've also all got Darren Waller. I feel like he's probably, that next best receiving threat after Kelce, and his volume is just crazy because he's their number one option, unless they get a new guy.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that Kelce got over him this season was yards, which obviously yards matter, but I mean, Waller was just 2 touchdowns behind him. He was 2 receptions over him. I mean, they had the same amount of targets this season. I mean, obviously Kelce didn't play in that last game, but still, I mean, this guy's going to be a surefire one too. I'd take him top of the third if you had him there. That's probably where he's going to fall.
Yeah, I could see that. His questions, just like Carson said, just about that inconsistency. I need to see a little bit higher floor. Maybe, have like more consistent targets throughout the game and not have those games where he just gets like nothing. But overall, I still think he's probably like the best receiver after Kelce.
Yeah, I mean, he had a crazy like stretch of games, I think, towards the end of the year where he was just going off for like 38, like 35, which, is good and all, but you want consistency, just like Carson mentioned, which is why he's only second, but still a very solid second place.
I think he had a
but don't let that take you away from taking him, because I think where would you guys like third, fourth round? I feel like
I'd take him in the third.
Yeah, third or fourth.
I think there's a lot more depth. Go on. No, go ahead.
Yeah, because he's just as valuable, I feel like, as Kelce, because like these are the top. Because I mean, like I feel like the last few years it's been like there's been like 3 or 4 guys like Kelce, Ertz, Kittle, and then like he kind of fell in there. Mark Andrews kind of fell in there. But now it's really just like Kelce and Waller and everyone else. It's just like you don't really know what you're gonna
get. Yeah.
I mean, but no, going back to what I was about to say, like if you drop it let's say you get 2 running backs in your first 2 rounds and you go Darren Waller, you can still find yourself a solid, flex or like wide receiver 1. Like I guarantee someone like Terry McLaurin's going to follow the round 4.
Plenty of receivers, bro. There's always receivers.
Just I can keep. I mean, maybe he may not be there, but there's be plenty of guys that like have a potential to break out as wide receiver 1 next year. Which when it comes down to it, fantasy is a whole team game. So if you're one area that's sort of slacking, as long as you get consistency is what really matters.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Diggs. Where did you guys – wasn't Diggs like in like the 6th round or something?
I took him – I think it was like the end of the 5th.
Oh, my God.
So there's always going to be receivers like,
Yeah. And we haven't even had free agency yet, so we don't know where some of these guys that have potential to be a wide receiver 1 go when they find themselves in another system.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So moving on to number 3, I'll start with mine. I've got TJ Hawkinson. I mean, I think he established himself last season as, a top talent at the tight end position in the league. Really established himself in that offense. It seemed like no matter what, I could count on him to catch a touchdown. Even if he only caught that touchdown, like those 8 points were so valuable because like he was putting up like 8 points pretty much every week until he put up like finally a dud after like week 11 or something. But I think one of the more consistent options, not the best ceiling, but definitely like a really good floor and someone you can count on. What about you, Carson?
For mine or about Hawkinson?
Talk about your guys's.
Oh yeah, I mean Kittle. I just kind of had him at 3 just for like out of respect for Kittle. I'm just a little worried just still about his health, the quarterback situation. But I mean, it's Kittle. Like when he's on the field, he showed like when Garoppolo was injured and we had like Mullins in there. He still kind of is like quarterback proof. But just a little bit worried because I think that just like hinders like his potential because we all know he could be putting up like Kelsey type numbers. He's that talented. It's just sometimes the quarterback play isn't as up to par as I'm sure Kittle would like it. But yeah, that's why I have him at 3 just for the namesake and just because I know that when he's healthy and the Niners are clicking, he puts up great numbers. So
yeah.
Yeah, I guess kind of go off of that. The only reason that does concern me is that, dating back to when he had his like really good season a couple of years ago when he broke the receiving record, which eventually got broken by Travis Kelce this season, was like there really was no other options on that offense. And now we got Deebo Samuel, we got Ayuk. We don't know what we're going to do. Like probably going to go after receiver later in the rounds of the draft. San Francisco's got a good eye for those receivers down there. But, he's going to be able to produce because, we still got a run game that's predominantly what's our offense is from. So, I mean, I understand why Jose has him at 4, but I think he's still slotted as a top 5 tight end. So, yeah, and then the only reason I don't have TJ Hawkinson on my list, I'm just really worried about the quarterback play of Jared Goff. They don't have a really strong offensive line, but at the same time, he might be the only weapon on that team next year, which is going to like make things really interesting. I'm assuming Kenny Golladay does not want to play with Jared Goff, and nor does Marvin Jones. So who do they got left? Like Quez Watkins, and then they draft.
Oh, they have Marvin Hall.
Yeah, and then what? They're going to draft Devontae Smith or something. I think they're going to go defense in the first round, I'd assume, because there's really no point in building up this offense when you just be making a receiver pissed off out there, Jared Goff throwing balls at them.
Yeah. I mean, I think
that's actually a reason why I like him, honestly, because like he really is like their only weapon, and like if Goff like wants to prove anything and show like prove any haters wrong, like I feel like that's going to start with feeding Hawkinson, who's if those two leave, he's definitely going to be the number one guy in that pass offense.
Yeah. The team has also invested like a lot in him, so I would imagine they try to incorporate him a lot.
Yeah.
Moving on to my number 4, I've also got Kittle. I mean, you guys pretty much touched on everything. I just had him a little lower just because of the inconsistency at quarterback. But I feel like even with that, he's kind of like quarterback proof because even with Mullins, he's still out there producing. And when he's healthy, he's the best all around tight end in the league. And I think a pretty solid pickup, probably in the mid to later rounds.
For sure.
Okay. So moving on to number 4 for your Carson, you got Mark Andrews. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, man. I mean, his Lamar's MVP season, I mean, he was a monster. He was, I forgot where he finished, but I know for sure he was like a top 5 guy. And last year was like super disappointing. I know a lot of people took him, expecting him to be another, have like another top 5 type season, but he just didn't really perform like that. He was super disappointing, but I think that kind of evens out this year. I think the Ravens are going to be a lot better than they were this season offensively. Not like Lamar MVP like passing numbers, but I think if you just find that middle ground between this season and then his MVP season, you're still going to have a solid fantasy season for guys like Andrews. And I think he's super crucial to developing Lamar's passing game because he's that safety blanket in the middle of the field. And I just like the upside. I think I just am expecting a bounce back for him because like I think he really is like their number one option until they get, another receiver. I think he's like the number one guy. So I'm just expecting a bounce back from him.
Yeah. Liam, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I mean, I'll add on it my next one. So I'll just kind of talk on Gesicki real quick. Mike Gesicki was able to finish 4th in yards amongst tight ends this year. Had a really strong end of the season. I know he had like a big 20-point. I think he had 2 20-point games at the end of the season, which was good to see. And I think what we've seen in past with history, if history holds to what it is, young quarterbacks love throwing their tight end like a safety blanket. Mike Gesicki's perfect for that. With Tua Tagovailoa, he's going to be his top red zone threat. I don't care if they draft Devontae Smith in the first round. Devontae Smith is not a red zone threat. That Mike Gesicki is a red zone threat. He'll be getting a lot of work out there. Not really the highest on Tua, but I think, having a guy like Mike Gesicki who's shown that he's a good receiving threat, even with Fitzpatrick, so that it's not just something with Tua, that he's going to go out there and he's going to do well for them. I mean, the only other problem would be that, I think they do need another wide receiver, which something I'll talk on with Mark Andrews. I think another wide receiver will open up the game for him because if they're able to get the outside people, get attention on them, they got middle of the field for Gesicki to work. But, I expect a big season from him. I think he definitely finds himself in that top 5 range.
Yeah. And you can just go ahead and move on to your number 5 since we just talked about him.
Yeah, so then going back to Mark Andrews, Carson just kind of hit it on the spot there. I feel like another thing to add was just what I was trying to allude to with Mike Gesicki. I think an addition of another receiver is kind of like, it's like spacing. It's going to add another element because, let's say they get someone like Golladay or a big name that I've seen that's actually really like is Juju, another receiver to take the pressure off and, make these corners pay attention to these wide receivers. It's going to get Mark Andrews a lot more work out there. I mean, he still had a good season, though. He's able to finish 5th amongst tight ends in yards with 58 receptions for 702 and 7 touchdowns, Obviously not as good as his season prior, but I still think Mark Andrews still got it in him.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have him on my list at all simply because, I really don't know where they stand with that receiver situation. If they do get a guy, I feel like he definitely could finish top 10. But if he's really the only guy out there, I feel like the league's kind of slowly figuring him out. I mean, he slowed down this season compared to the season before. He still had a few monster games here and there, but I feel like he doesn't have as much in him like these other guys do.
Oh, definitely.
So moving on to my number 5, I've got Hunter Henry, a guy that was one of them pretty reliable for me last season. Felt like every week he was putting up 10, 12 points. Just a solid guy. If he catches that touchdown, it's extra. But I feel like he had a pretty good connection with Herbert and moving into next season. Obviously they've got the new coaching staff, so I feel like they'll be able to incorporate him more into the offense, from the get-go because he started off kind of slow. But, yeah. Neither of you guys have Hunter Henry. Do you guys want to add on to that?
I just I just always I mean, obviously you fear injuries with every player, but he just has a consistent track record with it. So I just I don't know. I just never really bother with him. But I mean, to be fair, I do like the fact that yeah, I mean, him and Herbert had a solid connection last year. He was a guy that was always kind of, yeah, like you said, he was super consistent for you. I don't know, just the injuries and then the fact that they might end up drafting a tight end or something, kind of gets me away from him. But I think he does have he has a high floor for sure, when he's healthy and because he's got Herbert, so
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, kind of add on to that. I mean, I'm always weary of him. I mean, his backup, Donald Parman, I saw a lot of good work out of him last year. I mean, he got 3 touchdowns, 100 yards, and 10 receptions for Ozzy. Not anything to blow your mind away. And then in terms of the safety blanket thing, Justin Herbert's not a quarterback that really needs a safety blanket. He's already, proved himself as a top 10 talent in this league. And if he's got a safety blanket, it's Keenan Allen. So only thing that scares me away, like Carson said, he's had an injury-riddled past. I've had him in my fantasy teams before. But definitely not a bad option. I wouldn't draft him super high, but if he falls to you and you're looking for a tight end, he's definitely one I'd look at.
Yeah, I feel like he's a guy
he has a lot of upside.
I feel like he's a guy who always outperforms his ADP. He always gets drafted super low, and then finishes in the top like 10 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to Carson, you've got the Logan Thomas at number 5 right there.
Yeah, man. I mean, he was a monster at the end of the season. I mean, like he had a 13 catch game. Like he, double digits the last, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. And I think just like that's why I like to see like having that momentum at the end of the season. I think he secured that probably like second option. I think behind Scary Terry, I think he's probably like the second option in the passing offense. And I think with Heineke there, I think for someone that was playing with Dwayne Haskins and Alex Smith, the whole season, and to get that late season production, and then now you're gonna get Heineke, which I think is an upgrade. From both of those guys. I just like it. I mean, he was tight end 3 last season, I think. Yeah, tight end 3. And, I just love the way he finished the season. He's a monster, and I think if he can just keep that consistently, sky's the limit for him. I think he could, finish as high as, like, tight end 3 again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I did have him up on my list at number 6 or 7, I think, before I changed my list around a little bit. But I know, definitely a monster. I think the only thing that worries me is that Alex Smith was his quarterback, and he's known as the check down king. I mean, not saying that if Heineke, we don't even know if Heineke is going to be the quarterback. Heineke might just be the backup. Who knows? If like quarterback like Mac Jones falls to their hands at, I think 19, I think they have their pick at, definitely something they jump on. But, super solid end of the year, but it's just hard, for recency bias at times to want to buy into something when someone has a strong end of the year. Like David Montgomery, for example, not saying he's going to end up like that, but some consistency is always something you got to pay attention to.
Yeah. Carson, do you want to move on to your number 6 really quickly since we already touched on him a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit higher on Tua than you guys might be. I love exactly what you said, Liam, like young quarterbacks. They love having that safety net in the middle of the field. And, he's just going to be a big-time red zone threat. I think, he's just going to improve. He showed flashes, the last couple of years, and I think, it's finally going to be his time to put up, like, a consistent season. And then, I mean, if they end up getting Watson, then, like, I like him even more. But I think, if you're staying with Tua, I still really like that pairing regardless, just because of, the fact that Tua's going to need that safety blanket, red zone, middle of the field. I just like that for him. That's why I have him at 6.
Yeah. And then going over my number 6, I had Rob Tanyan. I feel like it could go either one of two ways. He had like his Eric Ebron season where, he caught 11 touchdowns. And he could either, flop next season, or he could come back and show us, that he's the real deal. Because a lot of his stats were boosted by, I think it was like a 30-something point game.
It was a 97-yard, 3-touchdown game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that really inflated his positioning in the stats. But I feel like, he had a pretty reliable connection with Rodgers. And next season, I doubt they're going to get him any new receivers. So, it's going to be him and Tanyan again. Hopefully they can start off hot and keep it going. But moving on to Liam, I know you got Mr. Kyle Pitts at number 6. Okay, you love to see it.
Yeah, I'm always here for a bold take. I mean, I think he's definitely the best tight end prospect that I've seen ever since I've started following football. I think we can all agree on that. This man's 6'6", 250. He finished his 10th in the Heisman voting, but I think it could have been very higher. He was definitely – I think you could arguably say he was more unstoppable than Devontae Smith, just because of the fact that there's so many ways this guy can attack you. He's a tight end, so he has a mismatch one way or another. He's either someone that's too small for him or someone that's too slow for him. You're going against a linebacker. I mean, just looking at his college stats, in only 8 games, 43 receptions for 770 yards and 12 touchdowns. This guy was a Heisman top 5 guy at one point. I mean, if only 8 games of 770 yards, that's almost 100 yards a game, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I think, there's a lot of teams that I think that he could end up at that are going to make it really special for him. Some areas we're looking at, like Cincinnati could go for him. I think he'd be a great pairing with Joe Burrow. Then we got the Eagles. I've heard there's rumors they're going to take a quarterback. They're stupid if they take a quarterback, Howie Roseman. Draft Kyle Pitts if he's there. I think he's more valuable for you than get a receiver like Jamar Chase. I think you put Dallas Goddard and Pitts aside from each other. Pitts is someone that's just, so dynamic. You can play him as a big receiver outside. Just you be a nasty double tight end duo, just like what, sorry to mention his name, but like if it's Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski were looking like they're going to be back in the beginning of their career. I just, it's a really bold take. I know putting a rookie tight end at number 6 because, like just looking at some previous ones, like Kelsey didn't really start his career off that well. Kittle obviously took a year for him to get involved in that offense, but I just think he's the most surefire tight end prospect we've seen in so long. I just really think he's going to go out there and he's going to be a problem for defensive coordinators.
Yeah. I mean, I would compare him kind of to like a Darren Waller type.
Oh, 100%.
But like better, younger, probably faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it just depends on where he lands. He will definitely be in my list once I find out what team, he lands on. But yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I don't know about how high I would draft him though. Definitely not as my tight end 1.
Oh no! I wouldn't draft him as a tight end 1, but I think he's going to be a steal as a tight end 2 or a lower round guy. Like he may be someone I wait on just to go for, and I think he could just, I think he can outproduce a lot of guys on all of our lists. I definitely could see him outproducing someone like Fant, Tanyan, Hurst, even Andrews if Andrews keeps playing the way he did last season. I think he's going to be a special guy.
Yeah. Moving on to my number 7, I have Jonu Smith, a guy that's had a lot of injury concerns these past 2 years, but I feel like when he's been out there, he's been a really good option, in the receiving game. And if Corey Davis doesn't decide to come back, he kind of moves up in that depth chart of receiving threats. So I feel like him across from AJ Brown, pretty nice threat right there. I feel like he's one of the best athletes overall at the tight end position. And, definitely a guy I'm keeping my eye on for next year. You guys have anything to add on to him?
No, I think he's going to be a good option. I think hopefully Corey Davis doesn't walk, but like he just really went under the radar because he was injured. I know his backup Anthony Firsker had like a tight end 1 game this year, which, eventually like made Jonu Smith fall down. But this guy's a speedy guy. That's what they need in this offense. Some guys take the top off the defense that, is going to make the secondary account for them, which allows for Derrick Henry to get more work in. But I definitely see why you have him in your top 10.
Yeah, same, because, he started off the season really well. He was on, pace to probably finish, at least, top 5. I think his floor – or, excuse me, his ceiling is higher than maybe some of the guys I have, but I think just, the consistency overall is just kind of why I left him off. And, like you guys said, the injury concerns.
Yeah. Go ahead and touch on yours, Carson, real quick, Hawkinson.
I think this is the lowest he'll probably end up. I just obviously it's Goff is a downgrade, but I think still his fantasy production uphold just because Goff's going to be looking for him all the time, because that's really going to be the best weapon he's going to have in the passing game. I feel assuming that those 2 guys, Golladay and Jones, leave. So yeah, I just the fact that it's going to be Goff's guy. He has to basically be Goff's guy, or else I don't know who else he's going to end up throwing to.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be a heavy run game. I can tell you that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Heavy run game. But then when he finally gets the play action going, I think Hawkinson's going to get a lot of work if that opens up for them.
Oh, definitely. A lot of targets.
Yeah.
A lot of targets.
Liam, you're the first one to have Dallas Goddard on their list, so go ahead and tackle that.
Speaking of a lot of targets, this guy was very heavily targeted when he was out there. Obviously, a Philadelphia core that doesn't have a strong wide receiver core, so they got a really good tight end core. As much as Zach Ertz isn't the guy that he used to be, he was definitely a top 3 tight end a couple of years ago. Dallas Goddard, I think, is the next thing out there to be in Philly. I think 5 to 7 is going to be his peak. I don't really see him going any higher than that. But just kind of looking at his game log, first game of the season had over 100 yards and 9 targets. Then went against the Rams. He only had 30 yards, but still 8 targets. then he had 2 bad weeks against Dallas and Cincinnati, but then 6 targets, 7 targets, 6 targets, 8 targets, and 3 targets, a really heavily targeted out there. But, it's going to be interesting if they do go wide receiver in the draft. I don't think they really have enough cap space to go after one in free agency. But I think he's going to be the number 1 receiving option out there, assuming that Jalen Reagor doesn't take that next step. I think Deshaun Jackson, he retired, did he not? I want to say he just retired. But then Alshon Jeffrey has injury concerns, and so on and so forth. Alshon Jeffrey just got cut?
Yeah, I think I saw something. He just got released.
Yeah, he just got cut. But Deshaun Jackson is not retiring, though. He's still in rumors.
Okay, but he's probably going to leave if he wouldn't stay in Philly, I'd assume. So
yeah,
I think this guy, really confident in him for next year. Definitely, like, him and Pitts are 2 guys I see have, low ADP but high potential to be play above their ADP for next year.
Yeah, and they still got that Richard Rodgers guy who was like the tight end one for a few weeks in a row.
Yes, absolutely ridiculous. They know how to develop their tight ends out there, and with a young quarterback like Jalen Hurts leading the way, and even if they draft a young quarterback regardless, young quarterbacks, the time tells that they like to throw to their tight ends, so he's going to get a workout there.
Yes, sir. Carson, I know you have him as your number 8. Do you have anything else to add on?
Nah, I mean, Liam, hit everything. All those reasons that he just said. I just like the fact that he's been showing little bits and flashes the last couple of seasons, but Ertz has still been there, and now it's just the fact that Ertz most likely won't return. I just love the fact that he's going to get a chance to finally be able to put a full season together. And I mean, like Liam said, he's gonna most likely going to be Hurts number 1 guy, number one option. So yeah, that's all the reasons that he gave. I love Goddard for that too.
Moving on to my number 8, I know we already touched on him, so I'm not going to spend too much time, but just Gesicki, I feel like he had a few good games to end the season, and that's really all it takes to be a top 10 tight end is a couple of good games. So yeah, I feel like he has some good performances. He will definitely finish top 8. But moving on to Liam, I know you're the first one to have Noah Fant, and you were high on him last year, so let's hear what you say.
Definitely. I mean, he was a little inconsistent at times. He started the year off pretty well. Then he had some injury concerns, which kind of kept him out for a little bit. But, they got this full wide receiver quarterback. I mean, I'm assuming Tim Patrick's probably going to leave in free agency because then they got their guys with Judy, Hamler, and Sutton, who I was also very high on last year. I wouldn't know I'm with both. Yeah. You guys thought it was a mistake, and apparently it was because Sutton got injured. But, I mean, Fant was a solid tight end, was still able to finish as a top 10 guy. Super speedy. I just think with the whole receiver core out there in Denver, this is Drew Lock's year to prove that he's going to be the quarterback there. Unless, they maybe go a quarterback. I've heard in the free agency they're trying to look for someone to compete against Drew Lock. But regardless, I think he's such a talented guy out there. Really liked him over Hawkinson when the draft was going on anyway. I just loved how Fant performed in the combine and such. I mean, obviously not as good of a blocker as Hawkinson is, which Hawkinson was predominantly known for. Obviously now he's a good receiver. I just really have a lot of faith in this guy for next season.
Yeah. Moving on to my number 9, Logan Thomas. Yeah, I mean, a beast. We talked about him earlier. He used to be a QB, and now he's it's crazy that he's now one of the best tight ends in the league, and he didn't even play tight end until it was his 3rd year in the league.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, but just I feel like even though the QB situation's kind of iffy, I think he's probably their second most reliable target after McLaurin. Just a really big guy, kind of like a more athletic Jason Witten, just a huge target with reliable hands, and just someone you can trust.
Great comparison.
Yeah. Moving on to Liam, we got Robert Tanyan. You want to touch on that one?
Yeah, Carson and I actually got our list flip-flop. I like that on the bottom. But, yeah, for Robert Tanyan, the only reason why I don't have him as high as you do, Jose, is because that 97-yard 3-touchdown game really skewed his fantasy production. I did like some number crunching. It just didn't make his stats look that impressive. But
Yeah.
I mean, I did see I was watching like some videos about it. Like he does get open a lot just because the way Matt LaFleur schemes it to be. But I think it's still going to stay the same. And regardless, still going to be a threat out there. I mean, even if he doesn't go for 11 touchdowns, he'll still find himself probably in that 7 range. So I'd imagine he'll be a strong participant in fantasy for next year.
All right. So, all right. You want to go ahead and touch on your number 10, Liam?
Yeah. I have some technical difficulties on Carson's side. So I'll give our piece for Hayden Hurst since we both got him on this list. Super solid tight end out there last season, especially in this offense with everyone healthy. I'd expect him to play well. Finished the season with 6 touchdowns, 571 yards, and 56 receptions. Just showed, obviously super loved the story when he came out this season, talking about his battles, I think, with mental health. Obviously that's unrelated with it, but, super courageous guy. But otherwise, he's a really fast guy. And in this Atlanta system with tight ends, we saw Austin Hooper have a Pro Bowl season previously with them. I think, give him another year in this role. And you got to remember, Jonu Smith had 8 touchdowns last season with Arthur Smith as his offensive coordinator, and he still was able to make Anthony Firkser, relevant. And I think Hayden Hurst is, arguably more talented than both those guys, which I think is going to be a reason why he finds himself, on this list at number 10. I could definitely see him being higher, than some of the other guys. I wouldn't say put him past, I think 7's maybe the highest I could see him go, but definitely someone that I think is a strong candidate to pick up because I think he's going to fall in drafts with people going after one, like shiny names like Eric Ebron, even Hunter Henry, Rob Gronkowski, just because he played well in the Super Bowl. I think there's a lot of names that are going to go ahead of him, and he'll be one that will fall down. If you can snag him, be a solid, consistent tight end for people out there.
Yeah, I mean, I just looked up his – I remember he was a first-round pick, but I just looked him up his draft. He was drafted in the 14th round of the MLB draft.
Oh, my God.
Which is
that's crazy.
Kind of insane, but –
And he was drafted over Lamar. You got to remember that. He was their first round pick.
Yeah. He was their first round pick, but they ended up letting him go, obviously, to go with Mark Andrews. I still think he's a really really talented guy. I mean, obviously you touched on Austin Hooper's production. I definitely feel like Hurst could, put up something similar to that. But
what do you got to say about Fant?
Yeah, moving on to my number 10, Fant. Just a really good connection with Locke overall. They started off the season like really good, and then I feel like they just kind of lost it at some point and just kind of slowly started dying off. But I think if their offense is firing in all cylinders, and they really figure it out. I mean, this is Locke's like chance to really prove that he's their guy going forward. And I think he's definitely going to have to use Fant to prove that because, the tight end position is so crucial in this day and age. So definitely Fant, a guy to look out for.
Yeah. Who do you got in your honorable mentions sleeper list?
Yeah. My honorable mentions, I had Gronkowski. I mean, I don't know if he's going to come back. You guys think he's going to come back?
I think he did. I think he came out and said that he was definitely coming back, wants to come back for another season. And I imagine, Tom Brady's coming back as well, that they'd both be back together. Another season of chemistry. Another season of him. Like, he didn't have OTAs. He literally was doing WWE a summer ago, which is crazy.
He just showed up and caught two touchdowns in the Super Bowl.
Almost won himself an MVP for Super Bowl,
literally.
Honestly.
I mean, every week that he's out there, he's a threat. But he did have some weeks this year where we were kind of disrespecting him, and because he wasn't doing anything. But another sleeper I had, Irv Smith.
Yes, I was literally just about to mention that.
Yep. I mean, this is a guy that when they kind of finally kicked Rudolph out of the mix, this guy really stepped up and showed he's one of the most talented guys at the tight end position, super athletic, and a really just dynamic playmaker to add to that already strong receiving core. So yeah, definitely a guy I would draft as like my tight end 2 or 3.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of go off of that. I mean, for sleeper, honorable mentions, basically anyone on your guys' list that I didn't have. But some sleepers, like you said, Irv Smith, I'd like him for next year. And, let's take a look at another Alabama tight end who's definitely on his way out of Tampa. It's O.J. Howard. I think, Cameron Brate showed that he was a good, reliable target. I think Gronk, they're going to stick with those two guys. O.J. Howard's been in trade rumors since, literally like 2 seasons ago. I think if he finds himself out, he's a super athletic tight end. I think he's going to, thrive in another system. I'd love to see him go somewhere like the Patriots, who have a really poor tight end core. And I think that someone like Bill Belichick can mold him into, the next great New England tight end. And then looking at some other tight end sleepers, if Austin Hooper continues to have struggles with injuries, I love Harrison Bryant. He was great last season, but, a really kind of deep sleeper. It was only in a deeper league would I look at targeting him. And then Dalton Schultz, though, I did like how he played well with Dak Prescott. His production did seem to drop off when it was Andy Dalton, but assuming Dak is back and healthy, I do like that.
Yeah.
For next season. And you want to read off Scholl's list?
Yeah, I was about to say, let's read off some of Schultz's. So his honorable mentions, he's got Higbee, Ingram, Schultz, and Jonu Smith. And then for his sleeper, he's got Noah Fant or the Colts tight ends, Mo Alley Cox, Doyle, or Trey Burton. What do you think of Mo Alley Cox? Because he was pretty solid last year for a stretch.
Yeah, I mean, Carson, you can give thumbs up or thumbs down. Are you allowed to talk yet? Nah. Okay.
Nah,
but no, I mean, I'll get my piece on Mo Alley Cox. I really liked him last season. I did pick him up in the middle of the season because he was going for a stretch of games. But it was really interesting out there because they had 3 tight end guys, and we didn't know who was going to be. But, they got Burton, they got Cox, they got Jack Doyle. So it's going to be depending, especially in for the Colts, who are they going to find as their guy? Because, not a super talented wide receiver core. Even if they bring back T.Y. Hilton, you hope that Carson Wentz can kind of rejuvenate these guys. But definitely a sleeper for Mo Alley Cox if they're able to lose one of those guys, because the youngest of the bunch definitely has a lot to prove.
Yeah. What do you think of Higbee now that he's got Stanford at the helm?
Yeah, I mean, with Higbee, we saw what T.J. Hawkinson did last year, but, he's got 2 underneath guys. Cooper Kupp's shown that he's been his top slot guy for the last couple of years. And with Higbee, too, being underneath, it's going to be interesting, though, because they do have 2 solid tight ends. Is Jared Everett going to lead this offseason? Because they've had 2 really solid tight ends for the last couple of years. And, I know dating back to Jared Goff's, Pro Bowl season, it kind of took off every other game. It was either Gerald Everett or Tyler Higbee. But I think Tyler Higbee was able to separate himself this season, and hopefully we can see him, play well in this offense, where I think is going to finish, definitely in the top 10 amongst NFL teams.
Yeah.
And hey, someone I hope breaks out next year is Dawson Knox. I really liked him, in Buffalo. I know I see Carson giving some head shakes for those guys listening on our podcast form, but definitely want to see him go out and show what he's made of. And then also looking at another name, Miami alum himself, David Njoku, is definitely also in trade rumors, just like O.J. Howard, similar in their builds, how they're both very super athletic tight ends. And there's a lot of teams that need a tight end out there, and there's some people are going to walk away with that's great of a steal at that position.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, I don't think so. I think we're ready to surprise our viewers with what we're going to bring next week.
Yeah. So we'll see y'all next week with a very surprising episode. Something different that you guys haven't seen from us. So be on the lookout for that. And this has been the Coast to Coast podcast. This is Jose signing out.
Peace.